Welcome to Thieves' Cant, a tabletop gaming podcast with your hosts, Jeremy Shane and Chris White.
Welcome in, welcome back to Thieves' Cant. It is Thursday, February 19th. I'm Jeremy Shane.
And I'm Chris White.
And thank you so much, as always, for listening and subscribing at thievescantcast. You can email thievescantcast@gmail.com. And have I asked you to leave a 5-star review on your platform of choice lately? If not, let me do that now. Leave a review.
Do it. Don't do it for us. Do it for yourself. And, okay, do it for us.
Right.
Yeah, just do it for us.
How about that? We dare you.
Oh.
I bet you won't.
Yeah, I bet you won't leave it.
Prove us wrong. In today's show, a little back booth banter. We're going to chat about a mechanic that you and I both have some interest in, dungeon turns.
Yeah.
Now, I have to raise my hand first and say I know next to nothing about how to implement dungeon turns, how they really work, but you've told me in some discussions leading up to this discussion that I've participated in this sort of thing before. I just didn't recognize it at the time.
I think so.
Do we want to start by kind of defining what we mean by dungeon turn?
Dungeons and Dragons, there's a reason that dungeon's in the name, right? Because this is really what defined the game early on.
Now, I know today a dungeon is defined as it's wherever the adventure is happening. Right. So a dungeon could be a literal dungeon. It could be a cave system. It could be that jungle that you're making your way through.
Right.
Desert. Has that always been the definition of a dungeon?
I mean, obviously you could have some variants, I mean, dungeons could be more colorful and descriptive, but you really were generally in an underground complex. Most of them had man-made elements, like there were doors and there were traps and there were, secret doors. All these things that if I say dungeon that you think about, is pretty much what the design was.
Right.
Essentially, hey, there's something under the castle and we want to go explore that.
Yeah.
And that's where the monsters live and that under place. It's just a little different than the world above.
So like the Hero Quest board game, for example, clearly took this as its inspiration.
Mm-hmm. As time went on, these sort of faded out. And, you could argue as to why. You and I are sort of latecomers in a sense. We're kind of in between generations because we started playing in the mid to late 90s. And so we saw a lot of older rules and also a lot of the newer direction that
was emerging there.
That was D&D was going, right, yeah. And so I don't think we fully understood everything that was happening or what the dungeon master was doing at the time because we were still trying to learn the basics of the game and we're focused on our characters.
Yeah, my early days of play, I mean, I was constantly having my hand held.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have that perspective.
Right. And our games very much combined what's now called first edition D&D and second edition D&D, really, I kind of think we were on that Oriental Adventures line where it's kind of a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
But we certainly didn't understand the subtlety. We've not had opportunity to play any old school essentials, though I have the old school essentials, the rule book in my shopping cart right now. So it's going to happen.
That's your source of credibility.
That's what I've got. I'm going to pull the trigger. As soon as my wife tells me I can spend the $40, no, I'm just kidding. So we haven't played with this directly, but I understand that now looking back, there were obviously elements of this that our dungeon masters were incorporating. I don't think they were as transparent about it, but we'll talk about that. The idea itself is very simple. I mean, you understand what a round is or a turn in D&D now, for example, right? It's like, a turn is 6 seconds, right? A round is 6 seconds, right? So it's just an increment of time that's breaking everything up. Well, this is a similar idea. The dungeon turn is generally about 10 minutes long, okay? I guess you could break it up in a different increment, but that seems to be the most reliable way. A 10-minute long segment.
So this is what the characters are doing in that time frame?
This is what everything is doing in that time frame.
Okay.
So we're going to track now from the time when you want to start, maybe when the first torch is lit or whenever you want to start, we're going to track when 10 minutes passes every time in game. The reason we're doing this, and it might seem like extra bookkeeping, and it is, but there's a lot of things that are going to be happening. And what I found is that I think this really brings things down to a more visceral level. We're not just skipping things. So, for example, 10 minutes, right? Let's say you get in the dungeon, we get in the first room, it looks a little, something looks weird. And the wizard says, and I'm really applying this to like a 5th edition, okay? So that's how I'm going to explain this rather than in old school's essentials type of way,
okay?
Because I just want to convey the idea. So, for example, the wizard says, I'm going to cast Detect Magic as a ritual spell. Guess how long that takes? 10 minutes, right? Okay. Now, what's everybody else doing? The problem that I have with like D&D now, because they have gotten rid of all of these rules, is I say I'm going to cast this as a ritual spell. The DM says, fine, it's done. You detect illusion, whatever, we're done, right? That's it.
Okay.
Instead, the question is, what are the rest of you doing? Okay. Well, maybe the ranger says, I'm going to keep an eye out, especially on that door over there, that doorway, and make sure nothing comes through. All right. Well, what about the fighter? What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to get my sword ready. I'm going to make sure it's sharp. I'm going to do these things. Or, everybody is going to figure out what they're doing in that 10-minute increment. Okay. At the same time, I'm going to, as a DM, there's a lot of things I can do, right? So, first of all, I'm going to be rolling on random encounters because there's wandering monsters in this dungeon, all right? And this is something that I don't want to get too far into today because I think it's sort of a topic in and of itself. But, I'm tracking that. So now I'm tracking random encounters, right? All these rolls, all these things that could happen. I'm also, in these 10-minute increments, I'm tracking how long does that torch last? Does the torch last for 30 minutes? Okay. After 3 increments, torch is gone. You have more torches? If not, it's dark now, right?
Right.
How much food do you have? Every so often you're going to have to use your provisions, right? Or drink some water. So it's basically all of these things are moving simultaneously. And so by having this 10-minute tracker, it's easy for you to follow what's happening. And you're breaking it down at a much more organic level. And I think there's a lot of routes you can go with this. For example, first of all, you're going to have things like, okay, the door's locked. All right, well, the thief wants to try to pick the lock. It's going to take time, right?
Maybe 10 minutes.
Maybe 10 minutes. Okay, what are the rest of you doing? So what I find is it gets everyone a little more involved. There were several YouTubers that I referenced their input and their videos. So as far as the history goes, like Questing Beast, I use it's a great YouTube channel. He has some incredible content on both modern and older games. So I used his, but there was also another, Mystic Arts, which I had never encountered before, but he had great content. And so one of the things that he had done was actually created cards of actions that people could do and like real effects. So for example, I'm going to be the lookout when using that action. Like he had it, sort of this ability that the party couldn't be surprised because somebody was performing that act. And so all of a sudden you have this list of things that you can be doing that could impact what's going on around you, right? But at the same time, the whole dungeon's moving. And so if there are things happening, if I know that, well, they're, maybe deep in the catacombs, there's a ritual happening, and in 2 hours they're gonna sacrifice the princess to the demon lord, right? Okay, well, there's a clock that's ticking, right? So not only are you reducing the player's resources, not only are you tracking wandering creatures and wandering monsters and things like that, encounters, you're also tracking if there's larger events going on, if there's an actual timeline. So if the characters know that there is a real race against time, that changes things completely. It's going to change the way that they approach this dungeon. It also is going to require rest. After 10 dungeon turns, you're going to need to spend 1 turn to recover, to rest, because it's exhausting work, right? So you got to take a 10-minute break after you go so far.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can kind of see how this works and how you can play with it. Essentially, you're creating a whole other dimension to that dungeon crawl. Because I think now the problem that you have with all of these rules that have been removed from D&D, and we see a lot of newer players that are like, I don't get the dungeon thing. Like, why? What's the point? Right. Because all the dungeon is at that point is it's just basically a window dressing, essentially, right? It's just like, we're doing the same things we always do, but in a different place. Right. Like, we could essentially do this in a forest. It's just we're hopping from encounter to encounter, and this hallway is the escalator we take to get there.
This kind of brings things together in my mind a little more. Right,
because I think as I started as a DM and having no experience with these systems, outside of, again, I think I was, but I was not aware of it, right? I think I was ignorant to what was really happening. In my arrogance, it was always, I know when the party needs to have an encounter, right? And like I said, we will talk about random encounters because I think there's a lot more there, but this is a system to not only simplify, but
it almost alleviates some pressure off of the GM.
I think it does. Yeah, and I think, but it also gives a different flavor. And again, I think if I'm running this, I want to be transparent with the party, right? Okay, here's where we're at. Your torch got about, just so you know, your torch got about 10 minutes left on it. Hey, you guys are getting tired. You're getting close to rest. I mean, all this information you can share, right? But at the same time, like, I want them to know what they can do. I want the players to be aware of, hey, I can search. If the wizard's going to be casting a spell for 10 minutes, man, I'm going to take that opportunity to search this room really thoroughly. Or, hey, here's something else that I could do. Or, hey, I'm going to bandage the rogue's wound, while we're here. And so suddenly it's not this like high level overview of the story that's happening here and this group of random encounters that you're blasting through. And instead it's a much more visceral, you are in the moment with your companions grinding through this place. And with the understanding that the longer we're here, our resources diminish and things get harder.
Dungeon turns. If you've got thoughts, we want to hear them. How do you use them? What are some tools and tricks that maybe we haven't considered? You can leave a comment down below. You can email thievescantcast@gmail.com, and we hope you do so. Now, that'll do it for today. Join us tomorrow. We're back to wrap up the week. We've got a little Thieves Cant draft on the way. We're going to make some picks. We're going to be drafting winter-themed creatures.
And you're going down.
Until then, thanks for listening. As always, it's been Thieves Cant. I'm Jeremy Shane.
And I'm Chris White.
So long.
Thank you for listening to Thieves Cant. Email thievescantcast@gmail.com.